Students, today I will give a talk about the importance of love, trust, and faith in your teachers. So my root teacher is the Buddha. He's not everybody's teacher, that's fine, we all have different teachers. But I definitely have a lot of love, trust, and faith in the Buddha. So much, in fact, that many years ago I decided to do something that many people say is absolutely impossible. I came back to Australia from Sri Lanka, got off the plane with nothing but my 3 robes in my bowl, and little more, maybe a razor and a sitting cloth as well. And I set myself a task to walk all the way from the Gold Coast to Townsville, 1,500 kilometres, barefooted, with no organised support, often sleeping on the side of the road if I had nowhere to stay. And I did that because I knew that that's what the monks 2,500 years ago did. And I want to test whether or not it's possible to do today. And I thought it was possible because that's what the Buddha taught. I had enough love, trust, and faith in the Buddha to believe what he said, that his instructions and his teaching is universal and timeless. So it doesn't matter that we're in the 21st century. Living that way should still be possible. And not only possible, but good. And so I did it. I walked all the way from the Gold Coast to Townsville with just 3 robes a bowl, barefooted, no organised support, eating 1 meal per day, using no money, receiving no money, and just getting by collecting food from random strangers on the side of the road. It all really did happen. And it was hard. When I got off the plane at the Gold Coast, I had still eczema. Some of you probably have eczema. It's a skin disease. It makes the skin very, very itchy. It can even make it bleed and weak pus. I had it quite bad when I was your age, and I still had it when I was a monk, getting off that plane. In fact, I had an eczema-rated lesion on the sole of my right foot, like a permanent blister on the sole of my right foot. And I walked on that. I walked on that for about 400 kilometres before it disappeared on its own, which really shouldn't have happened because the doctors say that eczema can't be cured. It's impossible to cure it, they say, but it can be managed. It can be managed with steroid creams and whatnot. But I lived the way that the Buddha asked me to live. I followed his instructions. And then by the time I got to the town of Gladstone, about 400 kilometres north of the Gold Coast, for a whole lot of different reasons associated with the practice taught to me by the Buddha, it disappeared. But that's another story. Yes, it was hard, it was painful, but it worked. A lot of the times when we're at school students, our teachers will ask us to do things that we think are impossible. And many of our friends will say it's impossible as well. But you need to remember that our teachers ask you to do things because they know it's possible and they know that it's good for you. So especially homework. So I know there are times where you prefer to be doing other things, playing computer, chatting with your friends on the phone and on Facebook. And it's hard to do that homework. But we don't do it. We don't ask you to do that homework because we're mean and because we don't like you. In fact, it's the very opposite. We love you very much. We ask you to do it because we know it's going to be good for you in the long term. And so we ask you to have faith in us, trust us, believe us when we give you that hard work to do. So when you think about your homework and about how hard it is, you should at the very least not think that it's impossible to do. Because if it's possible to walk from the Gold Coast to Townsville barefooted with a lesion on his foot, this ordinary man can do it, then you definitely can do your homework. Now, when you're teenagers though, there comes a time where you start to change. You go into high school and you're not like in primary school anymore. And you start to notice that the adults aren't as good as you thought they were. That your parents aren't perfect and your teachers aren't perfect either. And that's good. That means you're growing up. We're starting to notice what the Buddha taught as the first noble truth. The noble truth of suffering because things are imperfect, including the teachers and the parents. And you'll notice that things can get really bad sometimes. It is true that there are good teachers and there are bad teachers. It is true that there are good parents and then there are bad parents and everything in between. So what can we do about that? Well, first the Buddha had a common sense approach. He said that we need to respect, love, believe and trust those who are worthy of respect, trust, love and belief. That you should trust and believe the good teachers and the good parents. And there's a really simple way to know the difference between the two. The good teachers, the good parents, the good mentors, the good elders, they will always encourage you to be free from greed, hatred, fear and delusion. And they will always encourage you to grow so that you are full of wisdom, compassion, contentment and courage. And the bad teachers and elders, they will teach you to be full of greed, hatred, delusion and fear. And they will teach you to empty yourself of wisdom, compassion, contentment and courage. Really, really simple test. So when you use that test, you can tell the difference between a really good teacher and a sort of good teacher, and a really bad teacher and a sort of bad teacher, and so on and so forth. Now, you children are very, very lucky, very fortunate. You've got good karma. I can say with full confidence, with all of my heart, that all the teachers inside this school are excellent teachers. They are committed to helping you move towards enlightenment by being free of greed, hatred, delusion, and fear. So that you can take it from me that you can trust them, you can believe them, you can respect them, you can love them. You need not fear that the work that they ask you to do is coming out of meanness. And that's the reason, students, why we have the tradition at this school of greeting our teachers like this, putting our hands together in Anjali, and saying goodbye to our teachers at the end of class like this as well. You see, when we do this, putting our hands in front of our hearts, we protect our hearts so that the heart can open. The heart feels safe, so it can open up to everything that our teacher teaches to us. And by pointing our fingers upwards, we point our hearts upwards, so that we can go upwards to the places that our teachers want us to go, raising us from childhood into adolescence, adolescence into adulthood, adulthood even to full enlightenment. So that's what we should do at this school. Whenever we start the classes and finish the classes, join our hands together in Anjali. Now here are some things that you can do at this school as well. Whenever you ask a question, if your heart feels moved with faith, love and trust, then you can also put your hands together in Anjali while you're asking the question. And while your teacher is giving an answer, if you feel moved, you can put your hand together in Anjali while you receive the answer and listen very, very carefully. You see, whenever you ask a question, you're essentially asking your teacher to do very, very difficult work. Human beings aren't slot machines. They're not Google. Yeah? Human beings have feelings because they're living, breathing beings who suffer and don't want to suffer. So every time we ask a question, actually, we're asking our teachers to go through a bit of suffering and do a bit of work for the sake of you. And because your teachers love you, of course they want to do that, but they still have to go through suffering in order to generate the answer. So when we do this, we show that we see the suffering that we're putting our teachers through, and we love them for that. And we point our hearts upwards so we can connect with them. And then when we keep our hands in Anjali while they give the answer, it means that we're really, really listening. This really helps our teachers because if they know that you really want to listen when they're giving the answer, they'll think, who cares about the suffering, about having to teach? I want to go through that suffering because I love the students so much. They're so respectful. I want you to also consider to build these signs of respect into your life with your parents at home. That perhaps when you wake up in the morning, you say good morning to them and you do Anjali towards them, because your parents are your first teachers in life. Where would you be without your parents? You wouldn't even know how to tie your shoelaces. And when you go to sleep at night, you say good night, that you also pay respects by giving Anjali. And that you can also, when asking them questions, politely about life, then you act the same way you do at school. Do it with Anjali and listen with Anjali. This term you're about to enter into the right speech program and act as both mentors and mentees. Through the right speech program, you will learn not just how to be a student, but how to be a teacher. You'll learn what it feels like to be a teacher. It's important to learn how to be a good student and be respectful, but it's, I'd say, much harder to learn how to be a good teacher. When you're a teacher, you must always take on the responsibility of being one who is worthy of respect, one who is worthy of trust, love, and belief. You have to make the effort to stand up and be one who is free from greed, hatred, fear, and delusion, and full of wisdom, compassion, contentment, and courage. It's a heavy burden. But just like doing exercise, going to the gym, going for a jog, when you take on burdens in the right way, it will make you strong and it will make you wise. And people will love you for it. They will look at you and say, there is a dignified and noble person who is willing to take on suffering, willing to take on a challenge, so that they can grow and they can help everybody else grow. That's what this school is truly about. True learning, true education, true culture, true civilization is a chain. It's a long chain that extends all the way back to the beginnings of human civilization, that is created by the relationship between students and teachers, parents and children, mentors and mentees. That chain is broken when students choose not to show respect and when teachers choose to not act in a way that makes them worthy of respect. And you're very lucky, students. Here at this school, we are conscious of that problem and we want your help. We need you to come on board so that we can mend that chain. That's why we have true learning at this school, and this school is the seed for the healing, not just of yourselves and the teachers and your parents, but the healing of civilization itself. You are our hope for the future. We want you to be on board. We want you to be inspired by this vision of what you can do to help us. And you'll find that when you live your life inspired, no matter how stressful life becomes with your tests and your study, you'll be able to breathe easy because you'll be willing to take on that burden. That's what the word inspired means, to breathe in, to fill up. You'll want to be part of this world. You'll want to live your life to the full because you have a mission to fulfill. And that is my Dhamma talk for you this assembly. May it lead to your happiness and welfare, and the happiness and welfare of all living beings. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.